Hi there, welcome back. Welcome back to the second video in the restoration series for this Philips B4X23A. And this one, I must admit, has gone sort of in a different direction. I've mentioned this before. I've got my routine where I check the power supply, then I check the audio amp, and then I check the radio, and I go backwards like that. Well, this thing started confusing me a bit, well, throwing me off a bit, because when I started checking everything, after I did the power supply section that I showed you in the last video, I found that all the capacitors were perfect. And when I say perfect, I mean like within 3%, 4%. And that is to be expected, just as the opposite is to be expected. But in this case, as I said, when one is good or two are good, then the others normally are. Those mustards are definitely very good caps. The other thing I noticed is that all the resistors are well within spec. Some of them are spot on. And I don't think I've ever found one this accurate or this close in all the radios I've restored. So these guys actually had got to the stage, this is 1962-63, they'd got to the stage where they'd overcome some of their problems with the crappy capacitors, with the exception of those two that I showed you, those two tall ones. So I decided to go in a different direction. I first of all had to stop and think about it, and when I stop to think about anything, I do it while I clean. So I've done a full cleaning of this chassis, and it's come out pretty well. There's no rust. There are a few stains, sort of marks on the coating, but it's not rust. So the whole thing has now been cleaned, and I decided to just check the reception. I showed you the reception last time, and I also mentioned that the FM was getting stuck. Well, believe it or not, that's a dial cord issue. I had to restring this thing again, the FM. I had to remove the dial cord completely. And then I found that the drawing they gave me doesn't really match what the pulleys here indicate should be used. So I had to sort of work around it, and I got it to the point where it's working now. I restrung it. The length of string seems to correspond to the number of turns I've given everything. I think it's right, and it's working, okay? But when I started testing this thing, the reception was very, very poor. It was weak, very weak. So I then did what I normally do when I get to a stage like that, and that is to test the tubes. Now, I don't have a tube tester. For one, those things are absolutely huge. Secondly, they seem to sort of tell you sporadic results. I've seen, I think it was X-Ray Tony, or was it Blue Glow Electronics, who compared tube testers, and he was getting one result on one, different result on the other. So I use what I call the Manuel tube tester. That is, I've got a set of tubes. I've got a number of tubes of the type that these radios usually use. So when I'm trying to see whether something's wrong with the tube, the way I do it is I put it on, try the old tube, leave the old tube in there, and then replace them one at a time to see if anything improves. There is a possibility that you could get two that have gone off, but generally I find that if a tube is weak, you can pick it up quite easily like that. Now that tube tester of mine costs, there are about 5 types of tubes here. So, and most of the radios I do use the same tubes. So it's an easy way of doing it. And I've replaced tubes like that in the past. It's always worked. When I started doing this, I got something interesting, and let me show you. Before going any further, I want to thank the sponsors of the video, PCBWay. They're the guys I go to for all the requirements that I have regarding PCBs. Now, as you probably know, my needs are fairly humble, but the services they offer are from anybody from the beginner all the way through to the pro. They offer a wide range of services, including advanced PCBs, if that's what you require. They've got the flexible and rigid flex, which is actually something that I'm pretty keen to try out one of these days when the project calls for it. And of course, they also do PCB assembly, which allows you to take prototypes all the way through with a lot of ease. So whatever your specific needs are, visit PCBWay.com. I'm sure you'll find something there for you. I've got the radio on, and just so you know, that ECC85, the FM tube, I've already discovered that it's fine. I've replaced it, I've got no change, but this is what we have on FM.
Este tem 4 intervalos partos, o que é o dobro da média europeia. A partir da manhã.
Distorted. It is picking up, but it's very distorted. And some of the stations that I should be getting quite well, I'm not. So the first thing I did was, after testing the ECC85, I went for the ECH81. Now the ECH81 is a mixer oscillator, and on the FM all it does is act as an amp. So let's try change that. We'll try again. Now it takes a while for that tube to heat up. The others should have heated up. Doesn't seem to have done much, does it? So what I'm going to do is put it back and look at that second one. Now, here's the problem. That tube there, that IF amplifier, the one in the middle there between the two sets of IF transformers, that is usually an EF89. Now in this case it's an EF85, which I don't have. But all that's doing is amplifying the IF stage, and if it's doing a good job for the AM, I guess it should do it for the FM, although obviously the band of frequencies is different. One is at 452 kilohertz, that's this IF, and the other one, the FM, is at 10.7. But because I don't have that tube, this is where a tube tester would come in handy. I'm going to leave it in and replace the EABC80. Now the EABC80 is crucial for both AM and FM detection and also the audio amplification, because it's got a triode in there. Now I know the triode's working because the amplification is fine. On the AM bands it's detecting fine, so it's got 3 diodes in there, so one of the diodes is fine, but the other 2 diodes that are used for FM could be off. And I have replaced the discriminator cap. That's the one capacitor I've changed on there. It's an electrolytic, it's a 4 microfarads. There was really very little wrong with it, but I decided to change it anyway. So I'll replace that tube, put this one back, replace that one, and see if we get an improvement. Okay, here we go again. Well, I can tell you that's pretty much the same as it was before. So again, that tube seems to be fine, so I'll put that back. And then I thought, well, the EL84 can't be off because the audio is fine on the other channels. So what could be wrong? And I forgot about the most important thing. Let me show you. I'm now measuring the B+. I'm measuring the output, the cathode of the rectifier tube, which is not a selenium rectifier, as I stupidly said in the last video. It's a tube rectification. It's then easy at 80 over there, and I'm measuring the B+ coming out of there. Now, according to the schematic, it's supposed to be, I believe it's 246 volts. Look what we're getting. 169, that's with limitation, with the dim bulb limiter on. I'm going to remove the limit, so bypass the dim bulb limiter. So we've got the full 230 volts coming in, and this is what we're getting. So my problem not only did I identify that incorrectly as a selenium rectifier, but it is tired. It's not producing the right voltage. So what I'm going to do is replace that one. I've got a tube rectifier. This is an EZ81. Now the difference between the EZ80 and the EZ81 is the EZ80 is got a maximum voltage on the anodes of 345 volts, I believe, and the current max is 90 milliamps. This one is 450 volts, 2 by 450 volts, and maximum current of about 200 milliamps. The only drawback is that this thing has a higher heater current. I believe it's 1 amp versus I think 600 milliamps. But these radios can handle another 400 milliamps on the 6.3 volts, no problem. So I'm going to replace that and we'll see what voltage we get here. And you've got to be careful because this guy gets really hot. And in fact, it's getting hotter than usual because it's dropping more voltage across it, which just makes the heat problem worse. Okay, let's try again. Now that's a lot better. Instead of 246, we've got 242, and it's creeping up. So that voltage, that B plus, is now almost exactly what it should be, which is brilliant. So our problem was the selenium rectifier, the tube rectifier. So now that I've replaced that, let me get this back down and let's see what the FM reception is like. Okay, all things being equal, the dim bulb limiter is bypassed, the new tube rectifier is in. It's on FM. Now that station down there is one that I could hardly receive, and it's one of the good ones that I'm supposed to receive well here.
This morning with a smile. Uma nova dos serviços e número nunca visto de faltas ao trabalho em muitos países da União Europeia.
And that's it. This thing has a range which is not normal on the German tube radios. This goes from 87.5 to 108. If you recall, on the German sets, it normally goes to 100 or 104. Some of them even 102, but very seldom 108 for this era. This one is at 101.6. It's one of the ones I always listen to. There's a little bit of distortion on there, so it's not absolutely clear. So I do believe this thing requires an alignment. I think what's happened, and I can see the FM lugs at the back there. Those two there and those two there are for FM, the IF transformers. And these ones with the paint on top are for the AM. And I can see that someone's been in here. At least that one, someone's been in here. So I'm guessing that what happened is that they started getting poor FM reception. They made the same stupid oversight that I did. I forgot completely that this rectifier was here. And they tried to improve it by tweaking the IF transformer. You know, for someone who's just made a stupid mistake, I'm not going to criticize theirs. But I think that was the problem. So what I'm going to do next is, I think I'm ready to jump straight into the alignment. I'll do the AM alignment, the IF alignment for AM, and then I'll do the IF alignment for FM. I won't be doing the RF alignment till I've got the faceplate on. There's one other thing that I've noticed, and that is that the Magic Eye tube is completely dull. I thought when I discovered that voltage issue, I thought perhaps because the B plus was so low, it wasn't getting enough voltage to light up. But even now with the voltage corrected, I still don't have a glow out of there. It's an EM84. I don't have an EM84. I've got an EM80 spare. But the EM80, you've got to change the position of the cathode. This one uses, I think this one is pin 3 is connected to ground. And on the EM84, it's been, or rather on the EM80, it's been 2, or the other way around. But I've ordered a couple of these, and so I'm not too worried about that. When I get the tube, I'll just replace it. But now it's time to set things up for the alignment. And as usual, having looked at the instructions that I've got, there are a couple of mistakes on there. But that's not unusual. I normally find some errors on these old schematics or these old service manuals. I don't know whether they did them on purpose or whether it was just something that was left in there by mistake. But it's not a problem because we know what we're doing. Knowing what it is that you're aligning and why you're aligning certain things just makes the whole instruction set a lot more logical. And also this one is in Dutch. I've got Dutch and French, I think. French to me is Greek. But Dutch, I can understand most of it using my old Afrikaans language skills from South Africa. So I can understand it, and even if I can't, Google Translate does a good job. So I'll go through that, I'll set this up, and I'll talk you through the alignment, see if we can improve it. The AM is working very well, but I'm still going to check it anyway and adjust it. And then, of course, the all-important FM. I'm ready to do the alignment, and as I mentioned, the IF frequency is 452 kilohertz, which in itself is a little bit unusual. Most of the German sets are 460, American sets are 455. Philips did it differently. So here we are. I've got the signal generator set to 452 kilohertz. The amplitude is as low as it'll go, 0.7 millivolts RMS. I've got modulation. It's AM modulation. I've got a 1 kilohertz signal, and it's 30% or 40% modulation. So if I put that on, it's going across here into that stepped attenuator. Attenuators at, 18 and 6, so 24 dB, I think it is. Can't read it from here. I can either increase or decrease attenuation by switching in more of those steps. That then goes out into the bottom of the radio where it goes to the pin 2 of the ECH81 mixer oscillator. That's the grid 1 pin. And now the audio coming out of the speaker connector, it goes across to the dummy load, and I've got it going into one of the inputs, and I've got the selector to speaker. I can also turn it down to dummy load if I want. And from those 2 points, I'm taking a couple of jacks, banana plugs, and that's going to the AC voltmeter. So that voltmeter is actually measuring that audio signal, that 1 kilohertz signal at the output. And if I put the volume up, we can hear it. Now I've got that signal pretty low. If I change the attenuation, that's another 12 dB. Take that away. Take away that one. That's about right. We don't want it too loud, but we also want to be able to see it properly. And I can control the volume here. So I'll put it about halfway, and we are ready to go. I'm going to just put this on dummy so we don't have to listen to it. We've still got a 4 ohm load across it. And now I need to tweak those red guys. Now what I use to tweak these guys is a very small screwdriver, like a jeweler's screwdriver. Those things at the top are little screws. They're very, very small, very fine. And if you have too much paint on them, one way to open them up is to use an X-Acto knife. You basically just open the groove so your screwdriver can get in there. And now all we need to do is we need to tweak that one, that one, that one, and that one for a maximum output reading on the meter. So that should be quite easy. Let's get started. Well, that's at a peak. Didn't change anything. That's at a peak. That one is a little bit covered up in paint, so I'll just clear it, just so the screwdriver can get in there. It's a very, very fine screwdriver. Those were just about peaked, all of them. And that's it. That's the AM/IF done. Not much improvement. I think they were perfectly peaked. Yeah, that actually makes sense. Nobody touched on the painted ones because they were coated. The others, I see some signs of tampering over here and here. So I'll set things up for the FM alignment and go the next step. Well, sometimes the best laid plans just go completely off the rails. That's what happened when I try to adjust the FM. What I do before, I was setting it up to do the adjustments, but before that I try and check whether I can get rid of any wax. When I looked inside, I saw no wax. I did see some of the lug, part of the lug was actually cracked. So I figured somebody messed that up. And I tried to move it with a wooden screwdriver, if you can call it that. And this thing was completely stuck. So what I decided to do was I had to take it out. There's no way I could adjust it because I didn't want to force it. I tried putting in some WD-40. I tried all sorts of stuff. Heat doesn't work on here either because it's not wax. So I decided I needed to take it out, and to do that I looked on the underside. It's not too difficult. These are actually quite easy to take out. You do have to desolder the bottom. You can't just take off the lid. So I took a few photographs of the bottom so I know exactly what to remove. And as you can see, it's only 4 connectors. It's the one on the bottom right. And then it was ready to come out, and it did come out quite easily. As you can see, it came out. You then have to just bend out those little dents on the casing, and the whole thing just comes out quite comfortably. You slide it out like that. Very carefully, you've got to sort of push the top ends, those 2 tubes coming out the top, so that they don't get stuck on the casing. And once you do that, it all comes out. And this is what it looks like inside. There's a lot of wax on the outside, but there's no wax on the inside. So I thought, okay, that should be easy. And then I looked a bit further, and what I found was one of the formers was actually cracked. The one on the left there, it's cracked at the bottom. So somebody put on so much force that it cracked the base. So any sign of movement was actually not the screw moving, the core, it was actually the whole former. So I had to try and fix that up. And I thought, okay, that should be easy. Again, I fixed that one, I managed to fix it, and I checked for continuity and it was fine. And then I found the other one had a bigger problem. So first one was done. I used some, once I checked continuity and everything else, I loosened the screw inside, the thread inside, while I had it in my hands, and it came out quite well. And then I went to the other one, and the other one was completely stuck. And when I turned it slightly, I noticed that halfway up the former, it was cracked, and it was sort of unwinding, as you can see there. So again, when someone forced this thing, it unwound, it actually cracked the former. In this case, it cracked halfway up. And at that point, I thought, okay, nothing I can do here. If I try and unwind that, it's just going to get worse. So I'm giving up on this IF transformer. I'm going to put it back, make sure there's continuity on the coils, put it back, and I'm just going to have to look for alternatives. I'm going to have to find a couple of IF transformers. I need both, really, because the other one is the one that's got the discriminator on, so it's very important, and it's also completely solid. I don't know what happened here. I don't know if somebody threw something in the top there, because usually wax is fairly easy to work around. You remove the top of the wax, you maybe put a bit of heat, and it sort of melts, and then it rotates. This one just doesn't move. So yeah, okay, there's a call out now. If you know of where I can find a couple of FM IF transformers for this model, let me know. It's picking up FM, and it'll still pick up FM. I'll make sure that it's still working. And I need to put this back because the AM IF transformers actually are in series with these. So if you don't have this continuity there, the AM IF just doesn't work at all. So yeah, that's about all I can do here, unfortunately. Well, I think I'm going to take a break about now because I must admit that was like a punch in the guts. You never like getting to a point where one component that's irreplaceable or one that you don't have a spare of just breaks down. And that's exactly what happened. But what I do know is that having put it back, the AM is fine. This is on shortwave.
It's going to have a lot of more opportunities in the future. Yeah.
And it's picking up pretty well for this time of day anyway. Early afternoon. Medium wave. Canary Islands football. Saturday afternoon, that's what happens. So AM is working very, very well. And it means that the FM coils are making continuity. They're fine as far as that's concerned. However, to receive FM, I do still receive it. It's a little bit worse than it was before because obviously when I tampered inside there, I made some changes. That one that I released, I was able to adjust and refine it a bit more. But the other one, I don't know what's happening. I've got to really find an alternative because as I've said before, endless times, FM is my main goal with these radios because they become really useful. They pick up very well. They sound great on FM because AM, we have very little here and very few people listen to AM. So yeah, that's a bit of a bummer. I don't like that happening, but it does sometimes. And if any of you know where I can get a couple of those transformers, please let me know. I'd like to buy them. I'd like to order them and get them over here. It doesn't mean that I have to stop the rest of the restoration. I still have a lot to do. I will do the RF alignment for the AM. Got to check the Farad antenna. Yeah, I've got the body to do. So there's still quite a bit to do. But this one does definitely throw a bit of a dampener on my enthusiasm right now. It'll pick up tomorrow. So what I'm going to do is cut it off for now. And thank you for your company. And I hope you enjoyed that. I didn't, quite frankly. But if you have, click like, share, subscribe, and all that jazz. And if you want to support the channel directly, please do so on Patreon. So once again, thanks for watching. Bye for now, and stay safe.